Paper Skies, welcome to the Underground Society podcast. Brother, how are you?
Stoked to chat, man.
What was your idea for Paper Skies? Where did that come from?
Where do paper planes fly? In the paper skies.
Sick. I don't know how much illegally you can talk about this. You can stop me if you have to.
Okay, that was insane. I think I was like 14 at the dinner table with my parents, and I started like crying. I was like, oh no, Skrillex is gonna sue me.
What are your specific goals for yourself in music?
I want to just scream Paper Skies. I want my music to scream that. I want like all of my friends, my teacher, my family, like myself to scream that. Like everything has to just scream Paper Skies. I want more and more people coming up to me being like, holy shit, you're Paper Skies.
What is the emotion? What is the message?
Reach beyond the skies. Like, don't set yourself a limit. The sky is not the limit, and you're meant to write your own future, your own path. I had addressed this question: what does it mean to be an artist? What do I want out of my music? And I didn't want to just be envious. You have to just be proud of your friends. That's like a life lesson that I had to really devour because I knew the whole world was watching.
Paper Skies, welcome to the Underground Society podcast. Brother, how are you?
Stoked to chat, man.
Hell yeah, same. We met back at Lost Lands. I forget what friends you were with, but I came over to you and I was a little messed up that night, so I apologize if I made a fool of myself, but it was a pleasure meeting you.
Dude, everybody was at Lost Lands, man. It's just, you go, you have fun, and whatever fun means to you, you enjoy it, yeah.
I'm stoked to talk to you about your music career, but I wanted to touch on just one thing before we kind of get into that, and that's when I was doing my research, I listened to Mr. Bill's podcast where you talked about your plugin company, and I thought that was super cool. Can you tell me a little bit about like what that is and kind of how you got into like co-owning this company that creates plugins?
Yeah, so, okay, me and my friend Mark, who's from California, I've known him for probably like upwards of 6 years now. We've always made music together, and he's been interested in the development side of coding and creating plugins. And he's always wanted to create his own plugins. So after years of finally talking about it, as COVID was sort of wrapping up, he got the idea of trying to remake the Ableton Resonator for other DAWs and FL Studio and things like that. Sick. So after a few months of kind of plugging around and learning how to develop properly in this new sort of format, he was able to like remake the Resonator in full. And then hopping in a call with him and playing with it, I was like, dude, why don't you add this? Why don't you add this? Why don't you add that? And there was a lot of research involved for it, but the big thing was he didn't really know how to kind of handle the UI element of it. And me being a UI UX designer, I kind of just went hand in hand with him and just designed this interface for him. And then from there, it just kept evolving and evolving. Then I was like, hey, why don't we make this like a thing where we can now sell this? Right. And then we created the idea of Zinth Audio, and then I created the logo and the branding and got in touch with all the artists I know. So it was really just this project that came unto itself. There wasn't like a whole plan when we first started it. And now it's definitely a very planned like operation. We're looking to hire more people. But when it started, it was just natural. We were just like, let's make a plugin, let's sell it. And then we built a brand behind it. And then we figured out how to market it. And then we made social media for it. And now it's just this snowball effect.
That's awesome, dude. How did you get into like your side of things? What specifically do you do for the company?
So me specifically, I guess I do everything design-wise, like every post you've ever seen, anything that has to do with our branding, like our logo, just any post, any graphic you see, and even the design of the plugins is always done by myself.
Got it.
And Speechros, of course, contributes to it. I'm not going to completely block that out.
I'm sure he takes care of it. Sounds like your technical side, right? Your coding and all that stuff.
Totally. And he does. He really does the nitty-gritty work, which is like the coding and the hard
important
stuff. And then my ability is like, as Paper Skies, quote unquote, having the audience and having connections in the scene to bigger artists and to publishing places and news outlets, just being able to communicate this to as many people as possible. And then little things like getting back to customer complaints and emails and just troubleshooting and stuff. Right. So the two of us kind of just do everything that one person isn't able to do. So I can't code, I can't develop, but I know how to market things, and vice versa. He knows how to create the plugin, but he needed help sort of pushing it to more eyes and ears and knowing how to make it something people would want to buy.
What have been some of your challenges, I guess? How long have you guys been working on this?
It's only been a few months now, but so far, like, the best thing about this is that we're not giving ourselves any like super hard deadlines. And because it's only the two of us working on it, we have the freedom to adapt with our own schedule. Like, I'm not necessarily ever like too stressed about this plugin company. When we decide we want to make another plugin and that we want to put it out and we get really inspired, and obviously we're working on things right now, then we just have the freedom to do it at our own leisure. So with that said, there haven't really been any issues so far besides things like a lot of back end stuff. How do you sort payments? You know, are we splitting the royalties with the website that we're using? Are we going to make our own? How do you handle the legal side of things? We of course need to register as a company now that we're making money off our products. So I'm trying to understanding the like how to organize your own business essentially in the most like legal format possible.
Are you guys like incorporating and stuff? Are you guys doing?
Yeah. We're in the process of doing
that?
all of that right now, and I imagine it should be done in like the next month or so.
Very cool. What have you guys done so far? What has worked since you're the marketing guy? What have you seen work the best as far as like marketing like that specific product?
I think it's all about like how you brand it. Like branding is like the biggest thing, and like the big explosion that we had with Zinth when we first made it was like the mystery kind of aspect of it. I almost want to say we made this page called Zinth Audio, and there was no connection to me or Mark or anything like that. And our first post that we made was just a super simple in the DAW demo video of Resonator. It was just like a really down to earth OBS recorded sort of thing. But we know, for example, just through our own experience, that when you have the thumbnail of a video on Twitter, for example, be just your DAW, every producer ever is going to click on it if it's like within a 40-second time frame, just to check out what it is, even if it's for half a second. And then when you mix in the obscurity of it, the fact that it's from this page that has 0 followers and they have all this professional branding and they're not following anybody, and it's just this plugin that you've never seen before, like it just kind of like shocked people and stopped them.
Yeah, it's a mystery almost.
Yeah, they were asking questions. They were like, who's making this plugin? How much is it going to cost? When is it going to be out? And the whole point was to like not answer the questions, because the more we didn't answer, the more people were asking, the more comments we were getting, and the more it was like feeding the algorithm. And then by getting a lot of like bigger artists and news outlets on our side to start like reposting these announcements and these ideas and things, it just reached like a huge scope.
That's super cool. Well, I want to now dive into kind of your background. How do you kind of got all into music and stuff now that we've kind of talked about that plugin?
Yeah.
Take me before that, and I know that's just been the last couple of months, but what has been like your trajectory to get to that point? How did you kind of get introduced to music, and how did you get your start?
So I was introduced to music just through like all of my friends over the years. There's so many people that I could attribute to like the origin story of me as an EDM artist. I guess it's like growing up, my family, pushed me to be more musically inclined with a lot of the stuff that I was listening to. They bought me a keyboard at a really, really young age. None of them have any sort of musical background or anything, but they just thought it'd be like a nice creative outlet. I started playing the piano for years, and then that turned into doing lessons in which my teacher was like, yo, like, this kid's really shit. Like he doesn't do theory. He doesn't read the books, but he just comes and he just plays. But the one thing was I had a good ear for music, and I did a lot of songwriting. Like I'd come back to these piano lessons week in, week in, and the teacher would be like, oh, okay, did you learn this song, or did you learn this scale, or did you learn, this part of theory? And I'm like, no, I didn't do any of that, but I wrote the whole song, and it has lyrics and a chord progression and everything. And she told my family, like, yeah, like he wants to be a songwriter, not like a pianist, So that was kind of the path that I went down from there, was just like wanting to create my own music. I watched this Virtual Riot live stream where he made his song Lunar in like a whole live stream session. And I was being really annoying in his chat, asking him, how do you get started in music? How do you get started? How do you get started? How much does it cost? Because my bar to entry, I thought, was like, you need this massive studio with like all these mixer decks and everything. And it turns out it wasn't at all like that. They were like, just get a laptop, get FL Studio, download it. And I did. And the rest is kind of history from there. The DAW I'm currently using is still FL. Like it just feels very comfortable in my workflow. Like I've messed with Ableton, I've messed with Logic. I've even like, I don't want to say messed around, but like touched around in Cubase, like kind of played around a bit. But in my experience, I like FL the most for me personally, because I think I have like a very ADHD sort of workflow. I like going back and making small tweaks and just jumping all around my project file. And I'm not too organized of a person when I'm making music. There is a sense of organization, but compared to Ableton, where like everything is sectioned off into groups and every track has its own space in like the visual sort of area there, FL is just all over the place. And I think that kind of just matches the way I work and create music more.
Yeah, which makes sense, I guess, for probably some inspiration of doing the whole plugin company was, like you said, it wasn't for, you were trying to kind of replicate what someone had made for Ableton into FL or for the stuff that you guys use. That makes sense. Yeah. What would you even consider your music? Melodic, rhythm, color based?
Right now it's definitely like I'm cool with people being like, oh, yo, it's melodic dubstep, oh, it's color based. But my goal moving forward, of course, is to just focus more on like being an artist. I've been working on this album thing for the last 3 years, and I'm going to talk a lot more about this, I guess, this concept I've come up with when it's out.
Yeah.
But the idea of the album is like, what does it mean to be an artist and not a producer, not a performer? Those are, words that are replaceable, and you can replicate those sort of like, career paths and those sort of things in your life. They're possible, but to be an artist requires like a lot of self-understanding and a lot of diving into yourself. So as I become more of an artist, I feel I'm straying further away from just labeling myself to a certain genre. But at the moment, yeah, very like melodic dubstep, color based, just melodic bass music in general.
And you do more than just produce music too. You're a graphic designer. You do other things. So in a sense, you are more than just a musician. Even you're an artist yourself. So that's cool. What was the reasoning for starting the graphic design stuff, and when did that happen? So you were producing music. You've been in music for, it seems like, since you were a little kid. But when did the graphic design things kind of start developing?
It was just like the same time as the music. Realistically, like I made my first song the day I got FL, and I made the song in a day, and I called it First Attempt. And I wanted to like completely like do the whole process. I made the SoundCloud that day.
Sick.
I uploaded
Most
the
people
song
don't
to
do that.
SoundCloud. Like I wanted to be like the artist immediately, right? So I went straight to uploading and sharing my stuff. And I didn't want to just have some random album cover because I knew the whole world was watching, right? And I want to try and stand out. So I got this software. I didn't download it. It's a free online software called Pixlr. I think that's what it's called. I think it's still around. Okay. It's like a dumbed down Photoshop that's like web based. And I used that to make my first cover on the first day that I ever made a song. And from there, like it began my music journey and my graphic design journey, and kind of both always went hand in hand.
Nice. Yeah, it's kind of what happened to me too. I didn't even really know what graphic design was until the podcast a few years ago. And now I'm just like, now I do everything. I'm like, oh, well, I guess this is something that I actually enjoy doing that I didn't know that I was kind of just forced into it. So yeah. Have you been able to do graphic design or anything for outside of obviously like your artist project and your plugin company and stuff like that?
Totally. So right now, the way I'm sort of sustaining myself is just through my design work is where my like consistent income is.
Nice.
And then Synth Audio is kind of just like now my fun additional income, if anything. And then music has always just been purely for passion, because to be honest, streaming revenue is not income, No. So yeah, just being as transparent as I can about that. Like graphic design is where I'm looking to build my career, and I want to take the money that I make from that and invest it into my music project to make it something special, right? Nice. So a lot of the work that I do is doing design work for random companies, UI, UX stuff, designing websites, brochures, posters, advertisements, Instagram campaigns, just lots of advertising work all across the board. And it ranges to like, I do a lot of photography as well. I'll do photo shoots for like a woodworking company in Toronto. It will be like one side of things. And then the next will be like, an EDM event, which is kind of more what I'm aiming to do.
Right. Where do you work a lot of times? Like, how did you learn, and like, how did you get the education and stuff to be able to do that?
So
just self-taught?
Yeah, mainly self-taught, but I can't like deny the the good people that I had around me in high school, and the way that some of my even my professors guided me. I have to like really give them a lot of credit and a lot of thanks. I was always, when I was younger, interested in the idea of just picking up any new creative skill. Like I dabbled in coding, I dabbled in like 3D work, and those are the two that I didn't stick with. But then the things that did stick were like as many different elements of design as I can. Like aside from just the term graphic design, if you go deeper into it, like I do a lot of like illustration work now. I do a lot of typography. I do a lot of color theory, and it gets a bit more specific and more micro in there. And then, the photography that I picked up, the music is one side of it. I'm doing animation as well, a lot of video editing, and I'm looking to get hopefully into like more video work, like actual video production and film. So anything I can really like play around with, if I enjoy it, I'll stick with it.
My roommate and I were like, man, we'd love to find someone who like does animation type work, because it's hard to come by unless you are in connections with Pixar or some shit, some high level stuff. We're like, it'd be so cool to like have our little like car chats, or like at the gym, or like just at home chilling, like just our little like random conversations like turned into a cartoon. I was like, you're telling me about like animations and stuff. I'm like, damn, that's hella cool.
Even animation though, like the same thing, like all these topics I discussed, like you could be a photographer, but like that's the macro. The micro of it is that there's like so much involved in photography. What type of photographer are you? Do you landscape or do you portrait? And the same thing, even that's macro. And you get even more specific. So with the animation stuff too, I've been realizing like how like versatile my skill set is, but also how limited it is. Like I said, I don't do anything like 3D. I don't really do any like stop motion or anything of that sort. All of my stuff is just 2D keyframed animation, a lot of text animations, like simple graphics. I've been trying to make them as effective as possible. And that's where the idea that you can do a lot more with it opens up, is like, how do you take something so simple and then expand it as much as possible? But then I'll work with, other 3D animators and people that are doing like cross stuff between like taking footage and then animating in that footage to make it look real and as if something is happening. Like there's so many different types of animation within it, and working with different people. Yeah, you realize like there's a lot more to pick up if you have the time and the desire to.
That's super cool. How do you run your bit? Like, do you run it on like Fiverr or anything? Or how do you get like new customers? How do you like the business side of it? How does that run?
Yeah, I think I've always been kind of keen on just networking and like keeping in touch with clients and having a good relation with them. Like originally everything was through music. Like the bigger that the Paper Skies project got through my music, the more clients I was getting, and all of the work that I did in my first like 3 or 4 years of design was all stuff for artists. They'd be like, hey, I need a new logo. And then I'd like pitch them the idea like, oh, I could also like make you a SoundCloud banner where the logo and the banner are cohesive and fade into each other. And oh, do you need a custom sizing for Facebook? Do you need something for Instagram or your Twitter header? Like just trying to like grab for as much work as I can when I started off. Yeah. And then
all those little things, it's so smart.
And I think if you can impress somebody and give them a good price and have a good, overall customer experience with them, they're more keen to recommend you. And then through that expanded into like some local work, and then that local work grew, and now I'm doing work like all over the place. Like even recently, like I've just been typesetting a book pretty much, like working on just like fixing all of the type and spacing between everything. Cool. This one here is my own book that I'm working on right now for the album. But I'm working on another one as well. And I go to university right now, OCAD University, which is like a big art and design school in Canada. So I'll even find some clients sometimes through my school.
I wanted to dive into the branding of the Paper Skies and how your graphic design work kind of worked into that. What was your idea behind like the Paper Skies idea? Where did that come from?
The name itself came from like a rebrand. So long story short, I was Paper Planes was my alias.
Okay.
And Nest HQ, the subsidiary of Osla, like Skrillex's label, they signed a new house duo, which ended up only releasing like one project, but it was called Paper Planes. So they emailed me and were like, hey, we recommend you change your name just for like Spotify mapping issues in the future, because if you distribute on their page, there could be like legal repercussions. And I think I was like 14 at the dinner table with my parents, and I started like crying. I was like, Mom, no, Skrillex is gonna sue me. Like I had no idea what was going on.
If I was in that position, I'd be like, damn, Skrillex is gonna sue me? Like anything Skrillex is gonna interact with me? Sick.
Dude, I didn't even like know what was happening. I was just like mind boggled, right? So I immediately changed my name to Paper Skies because I was like, oh, where do paper planes fly? In the paper skies. And in terms of just the whole branding of it, like I find the more I understand myself as a person and the more I understand, like convey that in my music, my design work, even like my clothing, like just my goals, the way I talk to people, the more my project feels cohesive. And the more the visual side of it sort of like aligns better. It's like all the pieces are like slowly clicking into place over time. And the longer I work on this, the more cohesive it's going to become as a project.
Since you're more of a branding expert, what is that brand behind the Paper Skies? Like what is the emotion? What is the message and stuff behind your branding?
The idea that I have is like reach beyond the skies. Like don't set yourself a limit. The sky is not the limit. And, you're meant to write your own future, your own path, beyond this idea of the sky. That's what the name has sort of become. When I first made it, of course, it was just totally random. There was no significance behind it. But I like this idea, and I've come to this idea over the years, a lot of it through this album that I've been working on, because, again, there's that question, like, what does it mean to be an artist? Like, I really asked myself that deeply 3 years ago, and I'm figuring out what it means for me to be an artist. And more importantly, that, every artist is differently. That question is going to be answered very differently by everybody. But I'm understanding myself now, and my brand is all about, like, showing that artistry. Like in, again, like my design work, I want it to just scream Paper Skies. I want my music to scream that. I want myself to scream that. Like everything has to just push towards this project and the idea of like write your own path,
Yeah. So you were just talking about Skrillex and screwing you over with money and stuff. And obviously that didn't happen, but I did want to talk about a story that I did my research on and found, and you can stop me if you have to. I don't know how much illegally you can talk about this, but what's your relationship with Kilobyte?
Kilobyte. Okay, that was insane, that whole thing. I mean, right now my relationship with them is like pretty much non-existent. It's kind of just cut off. But yeah, long story short, for anyone on the podcast that doesn't know, I released my song Comet with Kilobyte Media, which was at the time seemed like a legitimate label. And the song did wildly well in the first like month or two. I think it pushed in the first 2 months to like 160,000 streams on Spotify. And for me, that was like unfathomable at the time. Like I was like not getting any numbers on Spotify. SoundCloud is my main hub, and I'd be maybe getting like 30 to 40K on a tune. So when that happened, like it was just this mind-blowing experience. Then I realized that those plays, most of them, a huge majority of them, were all fake, were all botted. And eventually that release did go on to become my most successful release. But that was the weird thing about Kilobyte, is how they ran their whole operation. Was they faked it until they made it. And they would push artists like myself, who they believed were making good music and had good branding and good consistency, but like needed the extra push to get big. And they'd fake your stats pretty much until they had a reputable song that they could send to bigger promoters. So inevitably, after like 5 or 6 months of my song being released with them, like these big YouTube promotion channels that were getting like tons of exposure for artists were uploading my song. And it's because Kilobyte would be sending them these email pitches like, hey, I've got this hot new artist who just came out of nowhere and went from, 40 monthly listeners to like 100,000 in the span of like a month. You should definitely be promoting their stuff because it'll help bring traction to your channel. And yeah, he convinced a lot of big people to promote the song, and the song did really well, as you know.
Well, you got some good promotion out of it, even though you got maybe screwed out of royalty. How did the royalty end of it work out?
The royalty end of it, I mean, it never got completely sorted. I think there's some people that are individually trying to fight their own battles to do it. But the owner of Kilobyte, he right now is going through, from what I believe, a lot of his own legal troubles that are aside from Kilobyte Media. So trying to get any of those royalties back is pretty much like an impossible quest unless you're willing to wait a few more years. But now all of the artists, I basically set up this whole like group. I set up multiple groups. There was one on Facebook, there was one on Discord, there was one on Telegram, and talked to every single artist that was on the label individually. And we all created like just a whole list of legal documentation to essentially send to every single DSP and get all of our royalties back. So for anyone that went through that whole process with me, which is probably about like 75% of the artists, we now own 100% of the rights to all of our music again. And some people sort of deferred and did their own thing, but it's a lot to keep track of because there's like a couple hundred artists.
That's nuts, man. What do you think was different about you? Was it just you were the one that found it, or were other people kind of seeing this stuff happening?
Well, at one point I ran my own record label, and it was like a premature thing to do, and I ended up stopping it purely because it was just way too much work for the age that I was at and for the income that I was making off of it. It was going great, but running that record label taught me the whole back end side of how music and promotion and everything works. And we had a marketing manager on our team named Jackson from Florida, and he looked into Kilobyte Media and found that, all their stats, like it looked like a city skyline, like their stat charts. Like it was just like random peaks, and then it would be consistent, and then it would dip back down because like algorithm would see this fake and delete it. It was just insane, like looking at how they ran their whole label. So at that point I was like, okay, it's fake. But am I going to talk about it? Does it matter for me to talk about it? Do I care to even like start this whole problem? And to be honest, we kind of just like, it's not worth the time for me to do this. I'm going to cause a big fuss, and everyone's going to say, oh, look at this guy complaining, or they're going to take my side, and it's just going to cause more problems. But then Kilobyte Media, out of nowhere one day, was, I think they were in the midst of getting caught up by a lot of artists DMing him and being like, yo, like, where the fuck are my royalties? Like, why is my song have all these weird stats? What's going on?
Yeah, where's my money?
I think the pressure just got to him. And one day in particular, he just deleted the entire Kilobyte discography, which included like my song and all of the other couple hundred artists that had released there. Like all their songs were just off Spotify. And for a lot of us, these were our top songs. So when you see it just vanishes off the face of the earth, you notice that. And that was like the big bomb that set everything off. That's where I was like, okay, I have all this information. I have all the stats to back it. I have everything recorded.
Let's do something.
Yeah, I'm going to try and do something with this info finally. And it worked out.
That's crazy. Damn. Wow. So good. Kudos to you, man.
Cheers, man.
taking that leap of faith, man. That's crazy.
It was nuts.
And just chasing it and doing the right thing. That's not always the easiest thing. What was kind of the key things that you took away from that experience, from having to not only lead kind of that whole situation, but also just like it happening to you?
I'm learning more and more, and this, like, everything for me right now is connecting back to the album, because this album is like everything that has happened in my artist journey so far. But I'm learning more and more that like stats don't matter. Like they really, really don't matter. Like you can see someone that has like 1 million streams on every single one of their songs, and they don't have any real support or any real fans. Like the numbers
you can't sell out. You can't sell tickets.
That's not what means your engagement anymore. And I made a tweet about this too. I talked about like my experience releasing with Subtronic's label, Cyclops Records, was one of my most successful. And
Dude, I didn't even know about that until literally like today when I was doing my research. I was like, what? He recently released on Cyclops? That's an interesting kind of. I didn't think your music kind of fit that, but it's a great song, dude.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a great song though.
Thank you, man. But releasing there, it was like there was a lot of like real like, you know, like the people that you see at Lost Lands in the crowds. Like it was just the real ravers, the people that are actually here to support the culture were the ones hearing the music. It wasn't people scrolling through on Facebook and they accidentally scroll past the song and it plays 2 seconds of it and then it registers it as a play on Spotify. Like it's not passive stuff. These were like real engaged people. And I noticed that as soon as I would go back to the same venues and the same like spots for shows that I'd always go to every week. And suddenly more and more people were coming up to me and being like, holy shit, you're Paper Skies. Like, bro, I've seen you like so many times at these shows and I had no idea who you were until now. And this is insane that I'm seeing you and all this shit. Like it was the release that like showed me, despite it getting sometimes like far less plays than some of my discography, it was one of the most important to setting my foundation with the local community of like EDM fans. So
it's so interesting. I have a similar kind of paradigm to that is on this podcast, the artists that don't have like a huge following, but maybe like have 7,000 people of like dedicated fans, number wise do way better.
Oh yeah.
And if I get someone bigger on, they like barely share or like don't really like engage with me or like, it's crazy.
Totally, dude.
Crazy. Like, you know, go where the people actually are like genuine and like actually are like true fans. I was talking to someone else about this too, about like the cult of Rez fans and how, Claxon, she collabed with, just talking about how like dedicated her fan base is. It's just, like you see some of those like the greats or whatever, and it's insane to see how dedicated and how massive some people's fan bases are.
Totally.
Just like actually how genuine they are too.
I think there's like huge artists that have a massive fan base though that I still wouldn't consider like
that don't
artists. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you can again, you can be a very good and a very popular producer. You can be a very good and very popular performer, but to be an artist is kind of more of like the humble route of like, there are so many artists that I know that are phenomenal producers and phenomenal performers, but because they focus so much more on the artistry, they don't have those numbers. You know, like it's a sacrifice to make almost, and you kind of have to be willing to take that, and that really shows if you're in it for the passion or if you're in it for the career, right? Some people have that balance. Some people stick to one side more or one or the other. But yeah, with an artist like Rez, I think that's a good example of like an artist. There's a vision there. There's a great performance. There's a dedicated fan base. There's a care for the music. There's an idea that you want to make something, you know, a little bit different than everyone else. And every song that you release, you're trying and you're showing that you want to be better, right? And I think even like Subtronics, when he released like Fractals, that felt like such a huge step up in his production. And like myself as a producer, like I really appreciated that.
Game changing.
Yeah, I was like, I could really see like Subtronics has the world right now. Subtronics doesn't need to be better as a producer in order to stay successful and to stay making money. They could just, you know, Subtronics would just put out whatever and people would probably eat it up at this point. But
he just put out a song. He put out a remix of Imanu's.
Exactly.
His
like, but there's a desire to put out good music and to improve, you know, and that's something that you don't see from everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I kind of wanted to dive into, kind of off topic here, but I know back to kind of your artist project and stuff and getting more, you know, fans and getting more of like more people paying attention to you and stuff. Have you struggled with putting yourself out there, or like has that been like a barrier for you at all, or do you think it's because you chose more of the passion over the career? It's affected you in any way? Yeah,
100%. Like I think that there have been a lot of opportunities to be a lot bigger as like as an artist and have a lot more exposure and a lot more fans, and I've definitely turned down a lot of those because it just doesn't align to what I want to do, you know. Like there have been opportunities where I could release with a huge label or work with a huge team or a huge management group, but I would need to change my sound, or I would need to focus on making something specific, or I would have to work with this artist and this artist and this artist. And it's like, if I really am telling myself that I'm doing music because I love it, then I need to stick to that. Otherwise, I'm losing my whole mantra of what being Paper Skies is to me, you know, the whole reason I'm doing it. And that's why I'm very happy that I have graphic design as my like finance option, and I have Synth Audio now developing into, you know, a company. Because I can put my business focus and the idea of having a, you know, a comfortable life and living in an apartment with your girlfriend and a cat and stuff like that can be separate from the music. The music can just purely be like showing that passion, and if it gets big, then it gets big. Great. And so far, you know, it's been going well. Like it's an honor knowing that people are enjoying my music and that people can come up to me and, you know, have a conversation about what my music means to them. Like that conversation, you know?
And I think with your style of music, it's kind of in its own right. It's kind of a wave right now. It's
Yeah.
like Chime's doing way, but his career is like taking off. Rushdown's doing awesome.
Hmm.
Ace Aura, like all you guys, like really have been that subgenre has really been popping off lately. So it's been awesome to see it. I'm a huge fan of that genre.
That's
So
sick. That was like a
yeah.
weird thing at first. Like that was like a big battle that I had with myself was I saw like Sharks was putting out like
Oh, I love
A-game,
Sharks. Oh my goodness
A-game
gracious.
music.
Ugh.
Like if you ask
Yeah.
me, Sharks is the best color-based producer in terms
Yes.
of just pure quality sound design, like the production aspect of it. And he was killing it in that front and getting all this
His
exposure
Water
for it.
Elementals EP.
Yeah.
His sound design is
So
it
fire.
blows my mind.
And
Yeah.
then Skybreak went on tour with Dabin, and Chime has always been huge in touring and doing all these things, but seeing him now reach more success, and then seeing especially Ace Aura like blow up like in such like not a short amount of time. Everything those guys have done is so deserved. I want to make that like very clear. It's so deserved that they have. But I remember like being like jealous of it at a point, like being like, dude, like I've worked like just as hard as these guys. You know, I work on an animated music video, and all the type in it is custom typography. And then I spend, 40 to 60 hours on just that, and then another 40 hours on the music, and then I do all the branding and marketing, and then I spend all day submitting to Spotify playlists, and then I spend all day sending to YouTube promoters, and then I look around for news articles, and then I have to book my own shows, and there was this point where I remember like I felt so burnt out because I was working so fucking hard.
When you're a one-man show doing all of it to like the best of your abilities, it's a long haul and it's a shit ton of work.
Yeah, but I felt really burnt out, and I felt really like not desired as an artist, and that like really upset me at a time. But that was like the mental rut in my mind that I had to fix if I wanted to become my own definition of an artist. Like if I wanted to focus on music for passion, I can't let those things get to me, and you have to just simply be proud of your friends. You have to be proud of the people around you. You can't be envious. Like that's like a life lesson that I had to really devour. And since doing that, I've been infinitely more happy in what I'm doing. And the work that I'm doing doesn't feel tedious anymore. There was a point where I was putting out a song like once every month, once every 2 months, sometimes even 2 songs a month. And that was the year when I did that Cyclops release. And I also released with Bygore, Exable, Rushdown, a bunch of other places. And that was like my grind year where I enjoyed the music that I made. I enjoyed all the content that I made. I enjoyed all the videos that I made. But I was making it more for the idea of catching up to those guys than I was for understanding myself as an artist and making myself happy. And that shift came when I decided to just go 100% focus on the album. At that point, I was working on the album, and I knew I had addressed this question: what does it mean to be an artist? What do I want out of my music? But after that first year was when I hit a pause and was like, my song Flow State, I told myself this is the last original song I'm putting out until the album's done. And that was the goal until I got inspired to do some last minute remixes. I did the remix for Eliminate, the Dash Star remix, the Turn on the Lights one. And same thing, those are just purely out of passion because I found my happiness in making music again. And I found what I wanted to do. And I realized that it's not about the stats and it's not about growth and it's not about playing the big festivals. I wanted to enjoy music again. And as soon as I did, like it got so much easier, It's
an interesting like thing to think about, like writing an album versus like the singles game, right? Especially being a young or not a huge artist. What was kind of your game plan going into choosing to? I mean, obviously relating it back to wanting to purely being artist. Was that the primary reason for choosing to do an album versus like playing the singles game?
Totally, it was that, and I wanted to create a project that is like irreplaceable, like a project that is absolutely me. And no matter what, it's not like anyone could ever say, I know that there are going to be people out there that will say like, oh, that project was mids, or I didn't like that project, or this project needed this, or it needed that, or the mixing, like it needed a cut in the mids or a boost in the sub. Like people will always place subjective things on music, but a project like an album is different than a single, I feel like, because an album is just like, my album for me is just my expression. It's just me as a person. You can't tell me how to improve my album per se. People can if they want. I'm not going to be upset by it, sure. But they can't like say, oh, this needed work or that needed work. Like it's one of those projects that I spent so long on that everything I did was intentional. And the only question is whether you like it or not. Because I like it.
And at the end,
I really fucking
and
like
at the end,
it.
And at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Yeah.
That's what matters is that you like it.
So that was the decision to do that. Is I asked that question: what does it mean to be an artist? And more importantly, like, who am I as an artist? What are my goals? And it took me 3 years to finally reach that understanding. And Now all the songs are done, but there's everything else involved with it, like all the other things that make me an artist, such as I have to do so much photography for it now. I have to film a few music videos.
Yeah.
I've storyboarded the whole thing. I have to hire like a whole creative direction team, a bunch of videographers, finishing up all the typography right now. I'm writing a book on the whole process of it.
You're writing a book?
Yeah, that's what this thing is. This is the first demo that I have of it so far.
Ah, got it.
It's a behind the scenes of just how I'm going about creating everything for the project.
That's cool. You're like actually writing it and everything? Or
Yeah. Like it's kind of like a process book for the album where it's going to showcase like how everything came from the start and how it ended. And, you know, some things aren't going to be used. I have a lot of photography and a lot of video stuff in here, and even like a whole storyboard for a music video that turns out I'm not going to use it at all for the album. I've just scrapped it completely. But I don't want it to be all for nothing. So I'm going to put it all in this book just to document it and show people like this is where my headspace was at, you know?
How are you going to go about distributing that once it's finished? Or are you going to?
As of now, I can't be sure. But with the labels that I'm talking
is that what you want to do?
Yeah, I'd love to distribute it. But as of now, with the labels that I'm talking with, I think that there's going to be like possible options for selling stuff like that and doing like a lineup of merch as well, which I'm designing. I want to make it like put every skill that I have built over my like 20 plus years of being alive and just put it into one project. So it's just like the most indefinitely me thing to ever be out in the world, you know?
That's amazing. I wanted to circle back to you were talking to Mr. Bill about you know, being an extrovert versus an introvert, and you were saying how you've become more of an extrovert over the years, and it seems like it definitely, just through talking to you, definitely that kind of person. But I think it's important for people to kind of hear how someone goes from being more of an introvert to an extrovert and kind of how that helps. And in industry, you know, with music and stuff, it's kind of important to, you know, your network is your net worth a lot of the times, what they say. And if you're an introvert, it's hard to do that. And it's hard to make a name for yourself in the industry. What was kind of the process for you going from an introvert to like more of an extrovert and kind of the person who you kind of grew into?
Yeah. I mean, that's like a very long and personal story.
Share as much as you want.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's like, there was a point where I was extremely introverted. And to be honest, like, there was a point where I was like very bullied. There was a point where I had like literally not a single friend. I was having issues with my family. I was just like life was just like not going good at all. And to become an extrovert person.
Hey, me too. I've been there.
That's the thing, but it takes it takes being at low points to reach high points, because that's the only way that you're gonna see it. Like, you know, people are so obsessed with being all up in the sky and, you know, the idea of like being able to look down on their successes, but you have to be on the ground and you have to be able to look up to know that it's there, right? So for me, I guess the main quick thing I could say is I pushed myself into uncomfortable scenarios, but I had a game plan and I had a backup option B if things didn't go well. And even going to like my first show was like such like a weird, hard thing to do, because I went by myself and I didn't go with anybody, and I don't know any ravers. And it's like all those little things, all those little times where I just like told myself to like power through and to go through are important. I actually have that. I'm not going to pull it off because it's stuck, but this is my high school graduation ring. All my rings have some nice significance to me, and on the inside of it engraved says power through. And I came up with that message to power through in 11th grade, and that was when I decided, after being at the most introverted point in my life, that like I wanted to turn things around. And it was the same thing with the album and with that moment. It's like I really do feel like I have these moments in life where I just like stop and just tell myself like, okay, like that's enough walloping and being like, oh no, things are getting better, things aren't going to change, it's enough complaining. Like, just stop and just make things better. And that's kind of what happened from that day. And that message, power through, has always gone through me. It's the idea of like, don't just push through something, but like power through, like really break through, like make an impact, you know?
Yeah. I like the fact that you took like baby steps too, because that's kind of the process of anything, right? You got to start small, and, you know, especially with something like that where it's so daunting, like training yourself into someone who is comfortable being around other people, is comfortable holding conversations, is comfortable, you know, being that person. Like that's it. It's such a daunting feeling. And for me, it's not that I was an introvert really ever, because I was an only child, so I learned how to communicate and stuff around adults, but it was more the fact of like people who are my age thinking about like, and it's not even that people think this about me, but other people's opinions of me. I cared so much. With that, like what I ended up doing after my first relationship in high school like ended, I was like, you know what, that was kind of my time where I wanted to switch into more of an extrovert as well. Yeah. And I was like, instead of like, you know, all these dates and stuff that I used to go on with her, what if I just start going to the movies by myself, start, you know, taking myself to lunch, start just small little things and
Yeah.
spending time with yourself and learning how to almost in a sense date yourself is what kind of how I looked at it. But yeah, so I guess my next question is with the introvert stuff. I know that you started a podcast with Skybreak for a little bit. Was that kind of one of those things that you did to, try and put yourself out there a little bit more and get more comfortable with that?
I think I was like at that point already at a good point of being extroverted, similar to where I am like right now. But the idea of starting that podcast was just to kind of like have something conversational to do during COVID, because right before COVID was when I like reached that point of like, I like going out now. I like meeting new people. Like this is something that I want to make a part of my life. I want to socialize more and I really enjoy this. And COVID sort of like stopped that in a way. We're still like, I've met so many people over the internet and over Discord, especially because a lot of artists were finally now just sitting at home. Like there was nothing better to do. And that was what we did with the podcast. So we took advantage of that fact. We're like, none of these artists are touring, and none of these artists are really going out and doing too much right now, besides, working on their own projects and their own stuff to seeing themselves. Let's start having some conversations since this opportunity is here. And we did that for a while. And then I got busy with school and releases. Sky got busy with tour and releases. And we just kind of called it from there. Ended. And yeah, just made it like a fun one-time COVID project,
That's sick. Yeah, I looked that up and I just typed a quick Google search and it came up that you started a podcast. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know about this.
Yeah.
I listened to a little bit of like the first couple ones. They were pretty good.
Nice. Yeah, no, they were fun to do, man.
I would just bring it back to the point that I was getting at. I was thinking maybe that was something that you did, because turning from a person who's introvert, you wouldn't think that a lot of introverted people would
run a podcast series.
The guts to do that. Yeah. So awesome, man. Well, we are getting close to time, but I do have a couple other things that I wanted to wrap up with is kind of asking you like, we've talked a lot about like, being an artist versus, career versus artistry. And I just kind of wanted to ask like plain and simply, what are your specific goals for yourself in music?
The thing is, I feel like I've already accomplished so many of the goals that I set for myself in music that it's like there's not a lot left. And that's why music now is just like, it's so much more freeing now. I feel like I could just do whatever I want and just have fun with it. My goals originally were, and the ones that were set in stone were like, I want to have a song hit 100,000 streams. I want to have a song hit 1 million streams. I want to be able to connect with an audience. Like I like the idea of if there are people that enjoy my music, I want to have like a format where I can just connect with them directly. I wanted to have played a show one day, and I wanted to have met, as many of my idols in music that got me started as possible. And the only goal I haven't hit so far is I would love to play this one music festival in Toronto called Veld Music Festival. It's like our big pop rap EDM fest that we have every year in the city. And I've been going to that every year since I was like 14, just like
when it really started for you.
Yeah, it was an all ages fest, and I'd go like sing with like one friend or by myself, and then like random people would come up to me like, "Where's your mom?" And I'm like, "No, I came with myself." Like it was funny, but I love to do that. But besides that, like everything that I mentioned before that, like all those have been checked off now, and it's like a weird feeling, but realizing that and always like coming back to it and being like, "Oh, okay, I did it. Like it's done." It's a lot more relaxing, a lot less anxiety inducing. Because I feel like I'm not forced to push
pressure.
through. Yeah.
A lot less pressure, I feel like, to make it. You're like, all right, I've already accomplished
a lot of things I wanted.
Now you get back to our original point, and while you wrote the album, you get to focus now on just being purely an artist and creating things that you genuinely like creating. This less pressure. Yeah, that's super cool. Awesome. Well, we've talked a bunch about the album, but I did want to ask kind of just what can we expect from that? As far as like songs and what kind of went into it for you.
Yeah, you can expect like a lot more melodic stuff. Like I'll say there's not really any like big head banging live moments. I've been working on a lot of heavier dubstep now that I've been like going to like a lot of shows and a lot of like rhythm events and stuff too. Like I'm really inspired to make heavy stuff, but this album is like not that at all. It's really more what I grew up on and trying to be multi-genre and take my sound into different places and explore a lot of concepts that I've come up with that describe who I am as a person and my journey to be who I am now. A lot more melodic music and a lot more self-reflection than it is like sound design focused or like being like the coolest live performance album thing ever where everyone's headbanging and starting mosh pits.
Yeah. That stuff is fun, but there's definitely a difference between
the time and place for it.
That's still art. Yeah, there's definitely a time and place. I was gonna say. I know you have a new song coming out too. It actually will already be out by the time this releases.
It'll be out by now. Surprise release kind of. So it's my new song "How" with Exel is out now. We made that song in 24 hours for a charity event called Form All Nighter. And what happened was we finished the song. We'd sent it in, and then through just like a bunch of management issues and us wanting to continue working on the song and some issues like on Form's end, like there was just so many little things that amounted to the song just not being on the compilation. And when we came to that realization, like, it's better for us to not put it on the compilation, we realized we had a lot more time to put effort into this thing and make it something special. So we continued to work on it. Now we've got like a lot of visuals and music videos, and the song is a part of Exel's EP called Save This World. This is his debut EP. Right. And the two of us have just spent like a few months now like chatting about how we were going to brand and market the whole thing and made it a little bit more collaborative.
I've actually never heard of Exel. What kind of music is it?
Exel does a lot of like electro house and complextro stuff, like that old like bouncy 2016 like house sound,
like Nero type shit.
Yeah, and it's very fun, very melodic, very compositionally focused. And I wanted to work with Exel because his style of music really brings me back to my roots of what got me into music. Like I listened to a lot of Virtual Eye Complextro growing up, Porter Robinson's like Complextro stuff and electro house, Madeon. And it was like me being able to take my modern skill and dive back into that old sound and what got my music there. And that's probably the one song I'm going to do with that. And then besides that, I'm working on a few EPs. I want to do like a drum and bass EP. I want to do a heavy dubstep EP with like some rhythm and not tear out per se, but like more of that sort of flowy stuff. And just, experiment with genres a lot more, bringing my sound into it.
Excellent. That'd be sick. I'm super excited for you, dude. I definitely wanted to ask more about the charity thing that your song is going. How does that work? What's not super clear on what.
So what that was, so Form is a group that puts on a thing called All Nighter, traditionally once every year. It's a little bit scattered. Sometimes they do it twice a year. Sometimes I think they've even said potentially they might push longer than a year for the next one. But it's anyone can enter. You have 24 hours to make a song. And then they select X amount of winners that they sort of say at the start of the competition, say 40 people.
Cool.
And of the however many songs they get, they pick the top ones and they put it on a compilation. And then for everyone who didn't make it on the compilation, they put them in like a nice SoundCloud playlist so you can see like all the submissions that were sent. And it's this huge community event where all the proceeds and all the revenue that's generated from the songs goes to whatever charity they're supporting at the time.
Got it. That's cool.
So despite not like being able to like get the song on that compilation, like we made the song in that 24-hour window and we did a lot of promotion for the Form compilation. So my hope is that everyone on Exel's end and everyone on my end went and streamed and listened to the compilation so that we could still contribute to it in some way, despite like not having the ability to be on it, you know?
Right. Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of exciting stuff in store for you. I'm stoked about your album coming out, man. I'm definitely looking forward to that album. I'll be adding that to our playlist to Society Select, so all of our listeners and our community can listen to it. Before we wrap up, though, where can the listeners find you and follow along the rest of your journey and kind of stay up to date with you?
If you want to hear my music, Spotify and SoundCloud are the go-to places. If you want to connect with me as like a person and as an artist, Instagram and Twitter, mainly Instagram, because with Instagram, it's the one platform where I actually do try to get back to like every single DM and like every comment that I possibly can. And it's more focused on me as a person than it is like me being on Twitter being like, hey, my new song is out now. Hey, this is out now. Like I want to be more sociable on that platform. Right. So yeah, definitely hit me up on Instagram. That'd be dope.
Awesome. Final question. I ask this at the end of every single interview.
Okay.
There's one piece of advice you could give yourself when you first started producing music. What would that be? Continue to have fun with it. Focus on the business side, but don't get lost in it because music is not a business. Music is what you do to enjoy yourself. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, man. I really appreciate it. No problem. Thank you so much, man.